You're listening to the Full Court Press with your host, Drew Duncan. Don't you dare touch that dial. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Full Court Press. I am your host, Drew Duncan. We're live on 99.5 ESPN Radio, Emporia's Sports Headquarters. 620-343-6143 is the number. That's 620-343-6143. Again, that's 620-343-6143. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all at Drew Duncan 83. Don't forget, coming up here in a little bit, we're going to be talking about the Kansas City Chiefs and the NFL Draft. A little bit later on, it's going to be Say What. We're also going to be talking about the Oklahoma City Thunder being down 2-1 now, what they need to do, in a preview of tonight's game for the Oklahoma City Thunder following the loss on Saturday. In the meantime, LeBron James. Here we go. Can't wait for this one. What do you got, LeBron, today?
Down 3 when the tech happened. Did that spark something late? Okay, yeah, 2. Did that spark something late for you guys? I think Indiana only made 1 field goal.
No, I didn't. I should never got a tech in the first place. There's a timeout call. This guy's following me to my bench, and give him a little nudge, and he falls to half court. Come on.
Okay, LeBron. Thank you for that. You gave him a little nudge, and he fell to half court. Does that sound like a familiar story, LeBron James? Kind of like a game that you played in against Toronto? My goodness. I'm not going to get into that. Here's what we're going to talk about. Okay, in 2012, the NBA decided that they were going to revamp this whole flopping rule. And really the idea, kind of like the handshaking rule, was to help out offenses. And basically what they decided is that they didn't want defensive guys being able to draw charges that weren't necessary, make screenplays look more dramatic and forceful than they were. And what they were really getting, in elbows from bigger guys like Shaq and Tim Duncan, et cetera, et cetera. And basically what they were getting at is they were doing more things to protect the offensive players. They were trying to speed the game up. And a lot of this happened post-2005. That's what a lot of people have began to call the post-lockout era. And here's the deal. The league office decided that they were going to start keeping track of players who flopped. And after your third one, it was going to be $25,000. And if it got to be too egregious, then basically you could be suspended. Now, so far, I've never heard of anybody being suspended for this. And by the way, in case you're wondering who keeps track, it's supposed to be the league office. And this is an exact quote. It is defined as the level of contact on this play is inconsistent with grossly embellished fall to the floor. That is what flopping is. That is word verbatim what it is defined as. So basically, we know the deal. Dude, you're doing too much. It's a flop. And by the way, the then league office CEO, Stu Jackson, vice president, said, quote, "It's not up to the refs to decide if it was a flop or not." In other words, it's not their judgment call anymore. They just see what they see, and if they think it's a foul, it's a foul, and if it's not, it's not. That's really where it is. And Lance Stevenson was flopping all over the place. First of all, I want to take a moment here to give recognition to the all-time best flopper, and it's not LeBron James, it's the worm, Dennis Rodman. Because if anybody remembers that guy, remember Rodman, especially when he'd play against like Shaq, and he'd flail his arms all over the place, and he would do all this like dramatic like fake tree fall thing. Like, I'm sure everybody's seen that highlight of Triple H in the ring, right? And he's standing there, and it's like he may fall, and he may not, and it's like 2.5 minutes of this, and then he takes a step forward, and he falls down. That was Rodman. They had to have gotten that from Dennis Rodman. I mean, no wonder that guy was so good in the WCW ring, man. He was already a career actor. That's how good he was. Seriously. I mean, Rodman, I don't think that there was any better flopper in the world than Dennis Rodman. So let's just take a moment to appreciate who the best at it really was. Let's stop giving LeBron James so much credit for everything. I mean, seriously. Can we let somebody else have some spotlight? Not only was Rodman the best defensive player I've ever seen, not only was he the best rebounder I've ever seen, not only did he stop Shaq better than anybody I've ever seen, but he was also the best flopper that I've ever had a chance to lay eyes on in my life, man. What a great job of flopping by Rodman. I'm sure you can YouTube some Rodman flops somewhere. I know they're out there, as a matter of fact. They've got to be. They've got to be. We might post them to the ESPN Facebook page a little bit later on. Here's the deal. The problem with all of this is that it was, I believe, 03, 05, and 07, the San Antonio Spurs won their 3 titles. Or first 3, I should say. And the ratings during that time frame were not very good for the NBA Finals. Matter of fact, some of the lowest that they have ever had was during the times when the San Antonio Spurs have been in the NBA Finals. And we all know about San Antonio, especially under Tim Duncan and those guys. It was a pass first team, a lot of half court offense. There wasn't the up and down style that we have now. The style of play certainly was not as loose. It was more of a coach's game then still. It was very controlled. And there were a few coaches that really gave their players a lot of reins, but it was mainly at the collegiate level. And you hardly saw any of that at the NBA level. And this was around the time when all that was beginning to really transition. And what we see now is a style of play that is completely taken over with 90% of the NBA and 90% of all college teams. That was when all that was going on. And so the NBA, for fear of losing what was basically their casual audience, is what they were trying to go after here, they decided to go ahead and start putting these rules in place. I think it was 05 when they did the handshaking rule, and it was 2012 when they decided that they were going to try and start cracking down on some of these flops. But the problem is, though, is you didn't protect the defensive players when you did this. And we see guys all the time now who go up for shots for 3, and they do everything that they can to lean into a defender, to, fall on the floor, make it look like, they were fouled. They start flailing the basketball all over the place and try to make it look like a foul. And it's really gotten out of control. And the idea is more points on the board. The game looked like it was more exciting, and you don't want to miss the next one. But I don't think that necessarily works. And I think more than anything, it's been bad for the NBA. I mean, look, there's a lot of us that still watch it. There's a lot of us that still see the entertainment value in it. But let's be honest, in the social media world where you can basically get a couple of sound bites, look at some stats, and find a few clips, it's getting harder and harder to get people to understand how great some of these games were, especially because with the media-driven society that we live in now, especially for sports, you really only show 1 or 2 aspects of the game, and that's really it. And when I say aspects, I mean plays. And anybody who knows sports at all knows that, yeah, you got those games that are determined by, 1 or 2 plays. But for the most part, that's not the way that it is, and it leads into that. And I think the best example of that is the Central Michigan-Oklahoma State game a couple of years ago when, and to this day, as a matter of fact, Mike Gundy decided to take off 10-3 and make it 11-2 on his team's ring for the season. I mean, that's how serious he took it. But we all saw the play, right? Central Michigan, at the end of the game, there was a bad call. There shouldn't have been one last play, and they get a chance to throw up a Hail Mary, and they win. But if you look at that game in really perspective, then you would know that, A, given the roster and team and being that Oklahoma State was a ranked football team and they were supposed to be really good and there was high hopes for a national title that season, that Central Michigan shouldn't have even been in that game in the first place. Should not have been. So you have to look at that perspective from number one. So again, you have your lead in right there. Number two, you have to look at all the plays that happened beforehand. The play of Mason Rudolph, the defensive play, how they were given that opportunity in the first place, some of the coaching decisions. I mean, there were just 101 reasons why that game went that way. And the only thing that was ever shown on television and the only thing that was ever shown in social media posts was the last play of the game. Actually, the last two. And half the time, you didn't even get that. So really, all you ever got was the last play of the game. And unless you actually watched it, then you wouldn't have even known what the penalty was all about beforehand. And you wouldn't have known why Central Michigan was in the game to begin with. So the standpoint that I take is simply this. If we really want to make the game truly entertaining for fans, then how about we start going through with some of these actions that we've talked about on flops? How about we stop making it such a shooter's league? By every time somebody sticks their hand in a face, it's basically a foul now. I mean, it's to the point, literally, I have seen guys in the air leap on three-point shots, leap into defensive players and get fouls. I've made mention on this program a couple of times over the last couple of weeks that some of the things I've been seeing when teams are running the floor is guys literally stopping when they could just put the ball in the basket, and instead they're pump faking trying to get to the free throw line. The only time stuff like that should ever be done is when you're losing and you're trying to score baskets with the clock being still. But even then, it's better to just take the open shot. And I see a lot of times now where players, used to be you just squared up and you took the shot. Now it's almost as if sometimes these guys are looking around to see if there's anybody they can make contact with just because they don't feel completely comfortable with the shot. And given that your perimeter shooters are all much better free throw shooters now, it's almost a given. It is literally almost a given that the free throws will be made, at least 2 out of 3. Come on. If you put Steph Curry at the line, do you think he's going to miss? James Harden, LeBron James, Kyle Korver, Kevin Love. You think that these guys will miss? Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, Carmelo Anthony. I don't understand why the NBA truly believes that all these things have been good for the game of basketball. They haven't been. You see nothing but the same kind of offense with nearly every single team now, and that is boring. It's boring to see no change in anything. I think that's why the San Antonio Spurs, to some people, are like a breath of fresh air. Even given the situation, the fact that they finally won a game, the other night, and they're not down, there was no sweep. Even given that, I think that they are a breath of fresh air to a lot of people because the way they approach the game. They actually play the game of basketball. And you just don't see that very much anymore. And I'm not saying these other guys are not good basketball players. I'm not saying any of that. Please don't misconstrue what I'm telling you. I'm not saying that Ben Simmons is not a very good young up-and-comer. I'm not saying that Joel Embiid is not as talented as anybody else in the league. I'm not saying that LeBron James is a one-trick pony. These are not things that I'm talking about. I am talking about if you want the game to truly be interesting, then you have to make rules that apply to everybody instead of protecting a certain aspect of the game, leaving the other aspect of the game defenseless, only to make it look like they can't play defense. They can't play defense when you cuff them. When you limit what they're capable of doing. When you say, no, everything is a foul. Because there's been a lot of physical plays on the inside that people are looking for calls, and it's like, how was that not a foul? But then some guy flailing all over the place and flopping around is. As far as LeBron James getting a technical, I don't think it was worth a T. And it was obvious in the moment that Stevens did what he did, and that was he flopped. But the antithesis to that is LeBron, tasted your own medicine, amigo, and you darn sure would have wished it was grape instead of cherry, didn't you? This is a Full Court Press. I am your host, Drew Duncan. Did I just blow your speakers? This is the Full Court Press. I am your host, Drew Duncan. We're live on 99.5 ESPN Radio, Emporia's sports headquarters. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Drew Duncan 83. Additionally, you can call in at 620-343-6143. And don't forget, coming up a little bit later, we have my Say What moment. We've got that going on. Coming up next, we're going to be talking about the Kansas City Chiefs in the upcoming NFL Draft. I've nailed down a few players that I think the Chiefs should look at. We're going to talk about it right after this. Don't you dare touch that dial.